All right.
Everybody. Hi. Hello.
So as Mr. Hart said, we're from T.U.P.E, which stands for Tobacco Use Prevention Education. And I'm Ryan, and I'm a senior.
I'm Julia, and I'm a junior. And sugar, I don't know how this works, so I'm just gonna do this.
All right.
So basically, we are called T.U.P.E or T.U.P.E. I like T.U.P.E because it's a little bit more fun to say. But basically, like Ryan said, we stand for Tobacco Use Prevention Education. So basically, we're here today to talk to you guys about tobacco and tobacco products and what they can do to your health. And we're not here to tell you what to do or how to like make your life decisions. We're just here to give you the information so that you guys can build off of that and make an informed, educated decision.
And our guidelines are, a lot the same as like peer resource or wellness, where anything that's said in this classroom should probably stay in this classroom, to promote an environment for asking any kind of question you guys would need. And we also passed out note cards, and throughout the presentation, you can write down a question about like the presentation, about us, about anything that's relevant to what we're talking about or the presentation itself, and then we'll answer it unanimously at the end. We'll have Mr. Hart step out and just kind of be us. So
yeah, so basically just whatever said in here stays in here. And also if you guys have a question that you're not like embarrassed to ask, I know personally I get really embarrassed asking questions. So that's like why we have the question card, so you don't have to like raise your hand or anything. But if you have a question, you're like, oh, I need to know like the answer, just raise your hand, we'll call on you. It'll be good.
Or if it's like a clarifying question, we'll be happy to answer that. All right, so first off, what do you guys know about juuling or vaping in general? Just any kind of general knowledge. What is it? Yeah?
Vaping is kind of like I think it's kind of like an electrical version of smoking, and some people think that it's healthier than smoking, but really it's not. Like, I hear that one, like, vaping, whatever it's called, is worth 20 cigarettes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's like sort of branded for like smokers who are trying to quit, but they like still kind of want like a fix, so they vape.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Anything else?
Anything else?
All right, can I ask you?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I've heard that the nicotine levels in like Juul pods are really, really high compared to cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll get more into that later on, but yeah, some good facts.
So have any of you guys, I don't know if you guys can see this, have you guys ever seen one of these? Just like raise your hand if you've seen one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about half of you. Does anybody know what this is? You can just shout it out. It's Juul pod. So
Yeah.
does anybody know how much, I heard like some little bit going around in here. Does anyone know how much nicotine is in one of these? You know?
One Juul pod contains the same amount of nicotine that 20 cigarettes.
Yes, exactly. So 20 cigarettes, basically all the nicotine level fits into this little tiny, and then these little tiny pods. Does anybody know what this is? You're gonna shout it out if you know. Does anybody know what a dab pen is? Like, can somebody explain it to me? Go ahead.
It's kind of like it's not a Juul, but it's like it's weed instead of nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's THC instead of nicotine, so that means that it's more concentrated. Does anybody know what that means? Do you guys know what like more concentrated means?
Yeah.
So basically right now, weed that like you smoke is like normally 25 to 30%, but in a dab pen, it can get anywhere up to 95% concentrate. So just kind of showing how a lot of stuff fits in a little space like we saw in the Juul pod.
All right, so this is kind of like how, like the inside of a Juul pod, you have the battery, and then you have the coil, and then the cotton. And what happens when you like take a hit of the Juul, or smoke it, the coil heats up and kind of like, yeah. So this is a Juul, and the batteries, around here somewhere, and the coil heats up, and it produces. These are the only chemicals that are found inside the pod. Nicotine, that, and that. But when it's heated up, the chemicals change like I'm sure whenever you've like burned something like, you know, paper or whatever, it changes obviously. Same thing happens with these chemicals. You know, when they're burned, they create new different types of chemicals that when entered into your body can be harmful.
Okay, so one very common misconception when it comes to vaping and using dab pens is that it's vapor, and that makes a lot of sense because we hear vape, so we think vapor. So when you guys hear vapor, what do you think of? Do you think of like water vapor? So that's one of the many people think that it's just water vapor that you breathe in. So Ryan, right here, has some water. He's gonna spray the water.
All right.
Whoa. Okay, so do you guys see how it doesn't really linger in the air very longer? Like you guys can barely see it anymore.
Can
and
you guys
what's gonna
smell
happen
it?
to the water
Exactly.
on the ground? What's gonna happen to it?
It'll dry.
It'll dry, so it'll evaporate.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So when we have a can of aerosols, like right here we have a can of hairspray.
Right.
If Ryan sprays it, do you guys see it in the air more than the water? And what do you think is going to happen to that hairspray on the ground? Do you think it's going to evaporate like water?
No, it's just gonna linger.
It's going to linger. Exactly. So that's what happens when we breathe in the aerosol in a vape. It stays in our lungs. It doesn't just go away like water vapor. It actually, like you were saying, it actually lingers inside your lungs. So that's going to be very dangerous. And also, this is going to work. All of these chemicals, I can pronounce like maybe a few of them. They're all found in vapes. So it's not just water vapor. And some of these chemicals are actually found in antifreeze. Do any of you know what antifreeze is? It's stuff that you pour in a car. It's not good. Also, it can be found in nail polish remover. Has anyone smelled nail polish remover?
Yeah.
Does anybody like the smell of nail polish remover? No,
Can
it's disgusting.
any of you smell the
It smells
aerosol that's like right around here?
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Also, it can be found in fireworks. So my personal belief is if it can explode in the sky, why would I want that in my lungs?
Yeah. Remember, all of these chemicals are going into your body whenever you take a hit of the jewel. So, how many of you heard that like the about like the flavoring in the pods? They're different flavors. And whereas the flavors are FDA regulated and approved, the flavors themselves are approved, but once they're smoked, like I said earlier, when you smoke something, it creates different compounds. When it's smoked, that isn't regulated, and that's how they kind of get by the whole like FDA regulation. So they're okay to ingest, like the flavors themselves.
Don't drink.
Right. The pods themselves, do not eat them. You'll get like.
You'll get nicotine poisoning, but
Mhm.
it's the flavoring without the nicotine is regulated to be ingested into your stomach.
Right. Whereas the when you inhale those flavors, that isn't what's regulated.
One thing that I often say, because I was hanging out with some really cool middle schoolers and we were talking about this, and they were asking me, like, what do you mean it's okay to ingest but not just, like, smoke? And I said to them, would you ever, like, you would eat do you guys know what a Jolly Rancher is?
Oh, yeah.
How many of you would eat a Jolly Rancher? Just, like, show of hands. Would any of you guys want to smoke a Jolly Rancher?
No.
No. Because what would happen? What do you think would happen if you smoked a Jolly Rancher? It would taste bad? Do you think that it would, like, be kind of sticky in your lungs? Yeah, you don't want that. It's the same thing, where it can go through your stomach, but it's not for your lungs.
Yeah.
Okay, so vape flavoring. There's a lot of flavors of vapes, and they're one of my favorites, like that I've heard of. Not like that I use, but like one of the funniest ones I've ever heard is Musty Cowboy, Mermaid Tears. And when you hear these kind of things and you look to the Puffy King Cotton Candy, who do you think that they're trying to like get to buy these? Kids. Exactly. And so that's one of the big things, like just a couple days ago, they passed a new ban on selling flavored vapes in Marin County, so that they can't sell them because many people were saying that they sell to children, and that's a lot of people think it because it's kind of true. Many people like to think that if adults would like to use these tobacco products, why would they want to use all these flavors? Yes, it tastes better, but the flavoring is there to cover up the icky tobacco, so why would you want to use the tobacco? And also, with the flavors, the chemicals are not regulated inside the flavors. This is kind of what Ryan was saying just a minute ago. Like, you can swallow it, but you're not supposed to smoke it.
So yeah, we kind of talked about this, how they appeal to the youth with the like the tasty flavors, like the fruits, and like the packaging that looks, you know, a lot like, you know, candy. And they also use, you know, young adults and teens to advertise it to kids. You know, people that, you know, look up to social media influencers, stuff like that. And it's projected that our generation will replace today's smokers. Because I know that smoking cigarettes has gone down, especially in youth, but e-cigarettes have gone way up in the past few years, and that's particularly why it has.
And also, they were saying, so when I show you guys this, do you guys know that this is a vape?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of like, it's big, it's bulky. If you were carrying this around in school, do you think that people would like see it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Or if, like, you know, you pulled this out of during math class and you're like, oh, I'm going to take a hit in the back. People would obviously know, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I pulled out something like this, or
like this too.
like this, do you think that it's as easy to see?
No.
It's pretty easy just to fit up my sleeve, right? Like, you couldn't even tell it's there if I didn't want you to. And what else does this kind of look like? A flash drive. And a lot of people are saying that because you put it on this little charger, put it in, looks just like a flash drive. Mom won't know the difference. And so, that's why they're saying it appeals to the youth because they're making it easy to hide. They're making it easy to get away with using it. But if it was for adult smokers, why would they need to be able to hide it? So that was one big thing that was going on.
And yeah,
Also-
targeted marketing we talked about. I think we have a few examples of like cigarette ads from a while ago, like these are from the 40s, and then e-cigarette ads from today. And they look pretty similar, especially when we go through the other ones. Like this one. How many of you heard of the Camel cigarettes? Yeah, same kind of thing. That was a big controversy in how like the cartoon Camel was appealing to younger kids and how they had to, you know, there was a bunch of legal fees with that. That's kind of what's happening nowadays, or at least that's the risk. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and in these like ads, if you look, go back one.
Yeah.
If you look to this ad, you see how it says like big, powerful, beautiful style. Does that sound like appealing to you guys? Like everyone wants to be bold and powerful, so they're gonna use the vape.
Yeah.
Just silly things like that.
Yeah, especially this one looks strikingly similar, at least to me. You know.
Wanna be the cute girl?
Right. And the social media influence we also talked about earlier, but we give, you know, a couple examples of like teen influencers, famous people. You know, they are particularly picked because of their influence on young kids by these e-cigarette companies to, you know, promote the product and make it look better, just like with any other product, but specifically with e-cigarettes, it's a lot more dangerous to youth, which is why it's such a big problem.
How many of you guys have an Instagram? Just like a show of hands. The adults in the room can do this too. Go on Instagram. Awesome. Love it. How many of you guys know of someone over, let's say, 45 that has an Instagram? Do you guys see the change in hands?
I mean, slightly different.
Slightly different. But do you think that older people are following accounts such as Banger Buddy? How many of you guys have been sent a video from one of these accounts? I know I have. My friends have sent them to me. But people often say, oh, this is so funny, look at them vaping, or look at them doing something silly. But in reality, they're just using that to get into teenage minds and to show it to teenagers rather than someone older that may actually be using the e-cigarettes for what they were supposed to be made for, which was to quit smoking.
You guys, why else would they target young people? Yeah.
Probably because they're young and they probably think that they're young and don't know much about like the pros and all of the pros and cons about smoking and vaping,
Sure.
or yeah.
If you get someone hooked on something young, when their brain is still developing, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to quit.
Exactly.
Customer for life.
Good point.
Exactly.
Any other thoughts or?
Thoughts, feelings, comments, concerns?
So this is how much money they spend on ads every year. E-cigarette companies, $88.1 million.
So do you guys think that e-cigarette companies would get as much business as they do right now if they didn't have any advertisements or any influencers? What do you guys think? No? Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that money that they spend on the ads, they can really get people to want to try their product or switch over. That just shows.
So these are the popular, e-cigarette companies and brands, other than Juul. How many of you heard of like Blue, Mark 10, or Views? Yeah. It's promoted as being a healthy alternative to smoking, but in reality, that's not exactly the case. And advertising increases their capital. Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and oftentimes they used to make e-cigarettes, like if you guys can, I know it's kind of hard to see in here, but doesn't this kind of look like a cigarette? Does a Juul look anything like a cigarette?
No.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of shows how it kind of transitioned from being an alternative to smoking to it's a new, fun way to spend your time. Okay. So basically, like, they kind of showed that it's no longer really going from smoking to vaping. It can also go from vaping to smoking. And there's a study that shows that adolescents who vaped were 4 times more likely to start using cigarettes. And I know many people, like, I've heard this from my peers, that if I ask them, oh, would you ever smoke a cigarette? They go, ew, that's disgusting. That smells bad. I don't want lung cancer. That's gross. But they don't really realize that oftentimes a lot of the same thing that they're smoking in a cigarette are also in a vape. And also, do you guys think that cigarettes are more expensive or vapes are more expensive?
Vapes.
Exactly. So when most people start using vapes a lot and they get addicted, do you think that they're more likely to turn to the cheaper product?
Yes.
Exactly.
So as I was saying earlier, I think someone said that 1 Juul pod equals 1 pack. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's just a common misconception that like a pod is like a healthier and like you have less, like a more filtrated option, but in reality it's like smoking a single pack. Yeah.
Do you know how many milligrams of nicotine are in a pack of cigarettes?
About 59 milligrams.
But
And
oh, go ahead.
well, yeah, I was just gonna say like heavy smokers are like like a pack a day is like an expression for like heavy smokers. It's about the same thing. So.
And also, all depends. Like many people are saying that, oh, it's okay because even though it has a lot of nicotine, like I'm not taking as many hits as I would a cigarette because normally people that smoke a cigarette will smoke a whole cigarette in one sitting. But if you're taking 1 puff here, 1 puff there, it adds up, especially in a social situation. Like many people say, oh, I just vape in a social situation. If I'm at a party and there's a vape going around, yeah, sure, I'll take a few hits. But they don't realize how much nicotine is actually going into their body and how it's affecting their brain.
Yeah, and here's some of the health effects. How many of you heard of like popcorn lung? Yeah, not. And those of you who haven't heard of it, just imagine like what popcorn is to corn. Popcorn lung to your lungs.
It looks like somebody literally stuck popcorn on your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to show you guys a picture because it's really gross. Like, I can't look at it for too long. But it's also, one problem is that vaping hasn't been around for very long. Like, when I was a freshman, I maybe heard of like 1 or 2 people vaping. So it's like, it's just really started going. And so many people don't have, like, there's not enough research on it to really show, like, what happens, how it happens, like there are on cigarettes. So that's also another reason why many people are saying that vaping's healthier, just because there's not as many like research done to show that it's not.
Right. Also, scar tissue can cause breathing issues. And how many of you have had like trouble breathing today? Yeah. Just imagine that like every day.
Yeah. Especially with people like that have asthma, it can affect it a lot more. It's just, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys this little video. Can you guys like see the board? I don't know if it's turned off the lights.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if it's.
Yeah, it's silent to be here, so.
Let's forget it.
Ever wondered what's going on in your brain when you puff a cigarette? This is a tale of two chemicals, the nice and the not so nice, and what happens when they meet. Nicotine is fast and it's sneaky. Like an Olympic sprinter, it races into the lungs. From the lungs, it enters the blood and reaches the brain within seconds of that first puff. The brain is made up of many cells called neurons. Nicotine actually affects pathways in the brain called the reward pathway. The reward pathway is a normal and important part to our survival. It's the area of the brain which makes us feel good every time we eat or do something we enjoy. Once nicotine arrives at this area of the brain, nicotine attaches itself to the receptor on neurons, like a lock fitting in a key, and this wakes up the reward pathway of the brain. This is where dopamine comes in, the nice chemical. When the reward pathway is activated, dopamine gets released and we feel warm and fuzzy and satisfied. However, too much repetitive stimulation of the reward system can be dangerous, especially with nicotine. Nicotine hijacks the reward pathway, attaching to a nicotine receptor to release dopamine and convincing the brain that we need another cigarette. Every time we smoke, we get that feeling of reward, and so we do it more. This sets up an unhealthy pattern as nicotine tricks the brain into activating those warm and fuzzy feelings with every puff. This causes changes in the brain over time. The longer you smoke, the more and more receptors are created, and each one is craving its nicotine fix. Over time, the body learns that it needs nicotine to feel good, but it can never get enough. That's why it's so hard to quit. The longer we smoke, the stronger the cravings for nicotine become. With no nicotine to bind into nicotine receptors, the reward pathway is not stimulated anymore. This means there is less dopamine. With less dopamine, people get withdrawal symptoms. The good news is that these changes in the brain start returning to normal the longer you go without a cigarette. Getting past the first stage of withdrawal when you quit can be hard, with lots of empty nicotine receptors screaming out for their fix. But the good news is that over time there are fewer and fewer nicotine receptors as your brain goes back to the way it was before you smoked. If you need
All right. I don't know how to figure it out. I don't know how to fix it. Sorry, I'm not really tech savvy.
You can just hit escape and then just
Alright, so do we have any like clarifying questions about the video before we move on?
Does everyone understand that? Was anyone like a little surprised? Like, when I first watched this video, I was like, I didn't know that it affected the brain. Like, I thought it was just the lungs. Anyone else? Yeah.
Right, like, yeah. So.
Okay, so 85% of people that smoke and vape and say that they are addicted start before age 18. Do you guys know the legal age to start smoking and vaping? 21, 18? Yeah. So it just shows that many people are not only starting at such a young age when their brain is not developed, they're also doing it illegally. Because that's kind of the thing here is, it's not legal for any of us, except for the adults in the room, any of us to smoke or vape. And 85% of people that try to quit relapse. And does anybody know what relapse means?
Yeah.
Yeah? What does it mean?
It's like fall back into it.
Fall back into it, exactly. So, like they were saying in the video, it's so hard to quit because the receptors on your brain keep wanting it. And many people fall into the same cycle of giving back into it, saying, oh, I'll just take another hit, it's fine, don't worry. But it's compared often to heroin, cocaine, and alcohol with its addictive kind of like personality. And vaping, like I was saying earlier, vaping wasn't really a thing, but it really increased 900% from 2011 to 2015. So it's really like getting on track, it's starting up. And many of this comes from youth and teenagers, like a lot of people. Does anybody know a withdrawal symptom of any kind, like when you're, yes?
Well, I don't know like for which type of drug this is, but like a lot of people get chills.
Chills,
That's
exactly.
A common thing, yeah.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Are migraines one?
Migraines, headaches. Yes?
Don't people like get really sick or something?
Get really sick, you can start to throw up. Yeah?
Increased anxiety levels.
Increased anxiety. Exactly. Those are all really good ones. And do you guys think that would be fun if you had all of those at one time? If you felt shaky and achy and you had a fever and you were sweating but you were also cold and you were throwing up and you had anxiety. Does that sound fun to anyone? So that's why a lot of times when people are addicted, they don't want to stop because they're scared of those withdrawal symptoms. But also for many youth, it's hard for them to stop because you can't really say to your mom, sorry, I'm going through nicotine withdrawals, I need to stay home from school today. So many people will just continue the cycle.
And kind of relating back to the video, when you like start smoking and start releasing dopamine, the more you smoke, the less dopamine you release, so you have to smoke more in order to account for that. When you stop smoking or vaping altogether, like your body kind of develops a chemical dependency on like that substance, and like that's why the withdrawal happens. Your body kind of goes into shock and like freaks out.
Okay, like I was saying earlier, you have to be 21 years old to purchase nicotine products. Now, I don't want like to hear any names or anything or like calling people out, but does anybody like know a friend or have seen someone with a Juul or another vape product before? I have.
Yes, I have too.
We got all of these fun vape products from kids around this school. So it just kind of shows how people are not only doing this and it's not only harming their bodies, they're breaking the law. And this can be dangerous. If you're caught with possession of a Juul, the authorities can get involved and you can go through a program called Youth Court, which I'm a part of, and I've actually witnessed many people come because of vaping and all paraphernalia and stuff like that. And it's a serious crime. And also, if you get caught with possession of a Juul at school, you go and meet with Mr. Hirsch, and you go through like a seminar basically explaining like why you were doing it and if you know the effects that it's having on your body, and you just get a little educated. It's like a little more in depth of what we're like doing today.
So here are the stats that we collected from 2015 through 16 at Redwood, and as you can see, like grade 11, it's shown that they use alcohol and drugs more than freshmen. But we're presenting to freshmen to kind of like end that early and kind of get you educated, because they still use it, pretty frequently as well.
Yeah, and that's the difference between your age and my age. Like, we're very similar in ages, and it just shows a 2-year jump. People are using way more often than they were in freshman year. And this can often be because they're not educated about it. But the stats from 17 to 18, do you guys think that it increased or decreased?
Increased.
Does anybody have an idea of why? There's no wrong ideas here. Yeah.
It's only becoming more popular.
Becoming more popular?
It's the main one.
Exactly. So peer pressure, you guys probably know what peer pressure is. It happens. That's why we're here to tell you of saying, like, we're not telling you what to do, but we're telling you how to say no. If you want to say no, we're telling you how this affects your body, all that good stuff. Did you have a question?
No, there's like other reasons like stress. People use
Stress.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good. Awesome.
So we're gonna do an activity. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do an activity. So for this activity, can you guys like put your heads down on your desk, close your eyes?
Yeah.
Don't fall asleep.
I want to read it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's.
I can.
Do you have like the numbers?
I think so.
Balance them. Okay. So everyone please keep your eyes closed for this activity, just because I'll make the effects more. Okay, so we all know that tobacco is harmful to our health, but few of us really truly understand how harmful it is. And to give you a new perspective on the problem of tobacco, I'm going to ask you guys to think about death for a quick second. Okay, so I have some metal BBs here. Please listen to one as I drop it in the jar. Did everyone hear that? Just do like a thumbs up. Awesome.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay, so the sound of one BB is equal to one death. All right, so now think about a hard drug called heroin. We all know that it's bad, and it is. It kills people. This is the amount of people that die from a drug overdose from heroin.
Every day.
So that was 22 BBs that went into the jar, which means that 22 people will die every day from this drug, around 8,200 people per year. So now what about alcohol? We think that alcohol is bad for us, and it is. It can kill you. Not necessarily right away, but slowly over time. Here's the amount of people that will die from alcohol every day. That was 241 BBs, meaning 241 people every day, equaling roughly 88,000 people per year. So now let's consider tobacco. Tobacco-related death is the leading preventable cause of death in the United States.
Right, and when we say tobacco, we also include nicotine in
Yeah,
that.
tobacco products as well, such as vapes.
Right.
So that was 1,315 BBs, which means that about 480,000 people per year die from tobacco products. 88% of people who are dying from tobacco products every day started using tobacco before the age of 18. While tobacco may not kill you today or tomorrow, it causes more deaths than hard drugs or alcohol. So remember this each time that you use. Okay, you guys can put your heads up. Were any of you surprised by that? Yeah?
The last one, I was like, okay,
We're
still
still
going.
Did anyone think that it was like, did anybody have like any comments about that? Or someone said like they just kept hearing it going and going and going on the last one. When we first did that activity, I was like in your position and I was like, oh my gosh. Like I did not know that tobacco killed more people than heroin. Like, that just really surprised me.
Does anyone, like, even though heroin's a much harder drug, why would tobacco kill more people than heroin?
Because a lot more people use it.
Right, yeah, it's a lot more popular. Heroin has a very negative stigma, whereas tobacco and nicotine have less.
Okay, how to help. You guys can talk to an adult and show your concern. I know it's really hard, especially when you have like a friend that's using and you don't know how to properly go about it. You can often introduce new activities to keep them busy, or offer like an activity where they cannot like use their product. Like if you went to a school activity, then you can't really use your products there. You guys can also talk to us if you guys are ever like feeling like I need to talk to someone, for you or your friend, or maybe an adult in your life that's using. We're a very good resource. You guys can always go to Mr. Hirsch's room in 284 and we can come and talk to you. And it's kind of nice because we're close to your age, so you don't necessarily, if you don't feel comfortable going to an adult, you can come to one of us. And this was kind of like what Mr. Hart was saying earlier. They need people to replace the old smokers, so who do you think they're going to pick? Exactly. So, like you were saying over here, when you start using young, you get addicted fast, and when you get addicted fast, you're a customer for life. So just keep that in mind. So, yeah.
And yeah, just to reiterate, 80%
Sorry.
or 80% of adult smokers start before 18. Just to reiterate that, you know, it really starts, you know, where you guys are at. This is why we're presenting to you guys, not adults.
All right, so now we're going to do a little question and answer. So I'm going to ask all the adults to leave the room. You can provide